Hello and welcome to the Josh and Tyler Show. Today we're talking about the Oscars, the most predictable Oscars since Titanic came out. We knew it'd be nominated for everything. Not to brag, but we knew it was going to be nominated. The Oscars are not that exciting this year. Tyler, thoughts? Yeah.
What the fuck do I even say? I mean, honestly, like it's one thing that very few movies got released last year to begin with. So yeah, it was going to
Mm-hmm.
be a little bit boring, but at the same time, there has to be like some element of surprise. Like sure, not every foreign movie is going to get nominated for best international feature film, but like there are other categories.
Yeah. Let's just
Not to mention, even though I thought Soul was overrated, it was a much bigger Best Picture nomination worthy than half the shit on here. It's just
Yeah, so I've seen about three quarters of the movies on this list here. We're gonna skip the We're gonna skip the documentaries and some of the smaller categories because we just didn't get a chance to see them strictly because they weren't available. I saw the collective in documentary, but that was about it. That was available to view. Unless you really went out of your way to see everything, it just wasn't gonna happen. Yeah.
which I mean, I did when theaters were out, and the best thing about it was that I got to see some Canadian movies because yeah, Canadians don't actually watch their own shit. It's
No.
fucking pathetic.
And then at the end, we're going to go over things we think. And then again, Tyler, jump in here when we're going through a category. Things you think should be nominated, because I'm sure we missed a few. I mean, I got one or two, but like, I just don't know what you nominate this year. I just straight up don't, because it was not the best year for movies. There were still some really great ones that came out. And as much as you think Soul is overrated, I mean, I really enjoyed Soul.
Well, I mean, it was on my best of the year list. Like, obviously,
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
but like, it just wasn't a big year for movies overall. And I think if we had got a chance to see some more of the smaller independent ones, it would have been a different list where we're talking about how this is underrated. But all the big ones got the nomination, so no surprise there at all. Not at all. So
Yeah, one would think that extending the criteria thing from the end of 2020 to the end of this February would at least open things up a little bit more, but somehow it didn't. Half of the shit I saw back in 2020, and like Minari and Judas and the Black Messiah are the only movies from this year in this category that I think I've seen.
well, let's just be glad that The Devil All the Time didn't get a single nomination.
Yeah, which I
It's
mean,
a wonderful thing.
there were one or two things that I would have nominated it for, but that would have been like on a technical level, not really because I wanted
Maybe
it.
Robert Pattinson for Best Supporting Actor, but that's about it.
That
That's
would
the
be the
only thing I
prime
can see.
that would be the prime example.
Yeah,
Plus,
yeah.
didn't you say you liked the cinematography when we reviewed it?
A bit, but like, I mean, I think the cinematography list is actually pretty decent. So let's just jump right into this. So we're just gonna break down these categories. There is a lot of repeats, as every like I think there's more than usual Oscars here. So actor in a leading role, we have Riz Ahmed for The Sound of Metal, Chadwick Boseman for Raw, for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, Anthony Hopkins the father, Gary Oldman Mank, and Steve Ewan for Minari. Not a lot of surprises there. Tyler, who's your take? Who's your take, and who are you surprised that they actually nominated?
You know what? The only real big surprise for me was that Stephen Ewan got nominated for Minari. It's not that he was bad in it, because he was one of, if not the major highlights, and it's great to see the Academy nominate a performance that isn't like loud and bombastic, because one of the great things about Minari is that the arguments are often kept quiet or whispered in order to like maintain peace and stability within the family. They don't want to yell in front of the kids. They obviously do a couple times, and those moments are just as effective as the quiet ones. But yeah, that was a big surprise. I'm glad that Stephen Ewan is getting more respect as an actor. He's not being treated as just Glenn from Walking Dead or the creepy guy from Burning, because he was the villain in that, and he was pretty good in Burning too. Um, I'm not at all surprised that Chadwick Boseman
No.
got nominated for something. It was either going to be this or The Five Bloods, and if I got to be honest, I haven't seen Ma Rainey or The Five Bloods. Not because Not because I don't want to. I've heard great things about Five Bloods, especially with Solomon Lindo as one of the main survivors. And we'll probably get more into that into the Best Supporting Actor thing. But I would say it makes more sense to nominate him for Ma Rainey because despite the title, he's like built up as the star of the film because he has like some inside knowledge on Ma Rainey. But judging by these, if I had to pick just one, it would be Riz Ahmed for Sound of Metal, because not only did he do such a great job of communicating his inner feelings half the time without even speaking, because a good chunk of Sound of Metal goes on without dialogue. There's still sound, but like the lack of talking is a great way of simulating what it feels like to not be able to hear anything from an audience's perspective. And then, of course, the sound mixing, which I think it goes without saying we all want that to win for Best Sound. But the thing is, I've never actually liked Riz Ahmed as an actor, not really because of his lack of talent, but more because I just didn't like the projects that he picked, like Rogue One, Venom. Even though I like The Last Jason Bourne, he was my least favorite actor.
Wait, he was in that? Oh my goodness, I forgot.
Yeah, he was the guy. He was the guy Tommy Lee was trying to kill. But
okay.
His character was just so unique. There were so many moments where we should instantly hate him because he's in denial over the fact that half of his life, half of the things he'll be able to do in his life are completely gone. They're completely out of his grasp, and he has to adjust and find new passions in life, or find a way to still be a drummer without really knowing exactly what the beats are. There's that great scene where he teaches the kids he's learning alongside how to drum and get a beat. I think he teaches them like "We Will Rock You" or something like that, and it was so beautiful. It wasn't my favorite performance from Sound of Metal. My favorite performance is in the Best Supporting Actor category, thankfully, but my top runner would definitely be Riz Ahmed. A second best would probably be Gary Oldman for Mank, because even though Gary Oldman is like very out and about, like, you know it's him whenever he's playing a character, he completely disappeared into the role of Mank. And it was so heartbreaking to see a man struggling to fight against the system that disagreed with his political beliefs, or just watching other people who disagreed with him, but he still recognized their talent and wanted to support them every way, shape, or form, which is just as, if not more relevant as it is today, not for the exact reasons most audience members would like to admit why.
Well, I think that Gary Oldman takes this, and it's not the one that I would want to win. But because it's based upon Mank, the guy who wrote Citizen Kane, Hollywood is obsessed with themselves, so I feel like every voter who is over the age of 50 who considers herself anything will vote for Mank and Gary Oldman, strictly because he's won before and because it's classic Hollywood and it's Citizen Kane. I don't get Citizen Kane. I'm that guy who thinks it's got some really groundbreaking techniques, the way they film the lighting and they film the depth of field, and it's got maybe a few moments I like, but I think it's an overrated old movie. I'd rather watch a lot of movies over this one. And I think strictly because everyone's like, Citizen Kane, Citizen Kane, Citizen Kane, it's either going to win or lose at the category. My backup would be Anthony Hopkins, because people respect him because he's a sir, and he's Anthony Hopkins. And The Father's pretty interesting. I did get a chance to see a bit of it there when we had the screener. It's interesting enough that I think they go with a predictable and safe choice. And I hate to say it, but I think the rest of the people in the category are just there for inclusivity. So.
Well, on that note, like, the fact that Riz Ahmed could win, not just because he's not a white actor, but because he's playing a deaf character, there can be some... I hate saying this because I don't want to think he would win for it, but there's the sensitivity thing going on. And look, anyone who's about to tune out of this video, let's make it clear. We have no problem with anybody winning any of these awards ever. We do, however, have a problem. We do, however, have a problem with people winning based on their image. And based on the new rules that the Academy has implemented, it's going to be a lot harder to judge whether or not they're being awarded for their talent or not. It's a little concerning.
Well, actor in a supporting role is... I mean, I know who I want to win. So the nominees are Sasha Baron Cohen for Trial of the Chicago 7, Daniel Kaluuya for Judas and the Black Messiah, Leslie Odom Jr. for One Night in Miami, Paul Rossi for Sound of Metal, and Lakeith Stanfield for Judas and the Black Messiah. Now, I myself am not. I am surprised that of all the people that they grabbed Sasha Baron Cohen for Trial of the Chicago 7. He was one of the few characters in the entire movie that had any character development whatsoever, if you can call it that. Daniel Kaluuya is nice to see again. He wasn't nominated for Get Out as much as I'd like, and I think he did a fantastic job as that. I haven't seen One Night in Miami, but I hear it's excellent. And yeah, I'm sure you got a lot to say about Sound of Metal, but I really want to give it to Lakeith Stanfield because I like Sorry to Bother You, and that is a phenomenal actor who definitely has not got his dues in any category. But who do I think will win? Probably Sasha Baron Cohen, because they can't give it to him for Borat, so they got to give it to him for something. I'm sure they wanted to nominate him twice. I know that's a safe pick, but I think that's the safe shoe in here. But give it to Lakeith Stanfield because he's amazing. That guy is one of the best actors we have. I mean, just look at oh my goodness, I'm blanking on that movie he did with Zendaya.
That wasn't him.
Oh, that was a different guy. Okay. Yeah, but regardless, I'm just want Sorry to Bother You to get their dues. That's all I want. I want that to get people's, Yeah. Oh, thinking of David Washington Jr. Sorry. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts on this category?
Well, I'm not. The only real surprise is that the stars of Judas and the Black Messiah were both in the Best Supporting Actor category, and I actually like that because it acknowledges that this movie. I have seen it, and the only reason I didn't review it was because it frustrated me for certain opinions that it claimed to have and then kind of fell back on them. But I will say this, the greatest thing it had going for it was Lakeith Stanfield and Daniel Kaluuya, because they were both incredible. I think Kaluuya was better because I liked the scenes that examined Fred Hampton and his conflicting philosophies on what the right thing to do is. Although it goes without saying, Lakeith Stanfield was someone that they really appreciated because it humanizes a character who can instantly be viewed as a traitor, because in many ways he was. There's a real life interview at the end of the movie that kind of implies that he didn't really see himself that way, even though the movie kind of portrays him as someone who starts to really believe in what he's infiltrated, because the FBI agent that plants him in the Black Party, played by Jesse Plemons, who was also really good, does not get enough credit for it, flat out says that he views the Black Panthers and the Klan as like equals, like using threats and violence in order to maintain political values. And even if you don't agree with them, because let's face it, most of us don't, you get where he's coming from. And then Plemons has a really great scene where J. Edgar Hoover, played by Martin Sheen, intimidates him into like initiating an assassination on Hampton. He's just like, what are you gonna do when your baby girl brings home a black kid? And Plemons is just like, what are you talking about? That was like the scene where you legitimately saw Jesse Plemons as a human. I kind of wish they gave him equal credit, but the stars of the show were Lakeith and Kaluuya. But you're absolutely right. The person I want to win and the person I was glad got nominated the most was Paul Rasche, because his performance in Sound of Metal was so heartbreaking. When I looked up his IMDb, I had no idea that he had been around for that long. But the reason he got cast over so many other different actors is because his parents actually were deaf. He's a child of a deaf adult, or a coda, so he has plenty of experience. He's actually worked as an interpreter. So not only did he have a ton of research to fall back on, but altogether, he was just such a great actor. The last scene of him is this really tear-inducing monologue, and like, dude looks genuinely sad. He starts to like believe the things that are coming out of Riz Ahmed's mouth, where he has to say goodbye to someone, not because he wants to, but because that person is breaking the rules and customs of this new way in life. And it was unbelievable. It's the scene that I remember the most, even though I've only seen Sound of Metal once, which seeing Sound of Metal once just put me in a complete trance. And yeah, Paul Rasche would be my absolute favorite just based on talent. And again, his past fits the criteria for inclusiveness. Sasha Baron Cohen was definitely good in Chicago 7. Neither of us liked the movie, but we liked.
No, not really.
We liked his Christopher Walken impression, pretending to be Abby Hoffman. But if I had to nominate anyone from Chicago 7, it would have been either Mark Rylance as the attorney or Joseph Gordon-Levitt as the prosecutor, because Gordon-Levitt had a fucking arc, and like, dude's been gone for so long. We need to remind people that he's a great actor again, and that's the weird thing. Like, he's given a few good performances that should have been Oscar worthy, like 50-50. I mean, really, he was great in that.
I forgot about that movie, but yeah.
But if Paul Rasheed doesn't win, I would like Leslie Odom Jr. to win for One Night in Miami, because the great thing about One Night in Miami is that it looks at the civil rights struggle from much different perspective. One thing this and Black Messiah have in common is that they're trying to look at the conflict between other Black people over what's the right way to make progress, which is something that you don't see in movies very often. And what made Leslie Odom as Sam Cooke so entertaining was that not only was he just so suave and charismatic and had such a great sense of humor, but he had a very interesting way of kind of catering to white people, but also making a profit off of their racism. Like, whenever a white person covers a song by a Black artist, he makes more money off of it than anybody, which is something that no one would ever thought of. And I just sat there, I'm like, you're making a difference without anybody realizing it. And that was the great thing about Sam Cooke as a character. He was much more interested in making a difference by being himself, not by being a symbol like Muhammad Ali or Malcolm X, who he fights with the most throughout the film. And I wasn't sure who was going to get nominated for One Night in Miami. I thought Leslie Odom had the least amount of chances just because he was the lighthearted one. I thought Kingsley Ben-Adir as Malcolm X was going to get the most consideration, and he was really good. And I also would have liked Aldous Hodge as Jim Brown, because he's the silent observer who, once he finally starts speaking up towards the end, he has the most amount of wisdom. And that was the other great thing about Jim Brown as a character. He listens first and talks second. Nobody fucking did that back then, and they don't fucking do it now, and it's just all the more pathetic.
Yeah, it's not a huge amount of surprises there. This one is not a surprising category at all. Actress in a leading role: Viola Davis for Ma Rainey, Andrea Day for The United States versus Billie Holiday, Vanessa Kirby for Pieces of a Woman, and two big surprises here, Tyler: Frances McDormand for Nomadland and Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman.
Real shocking. I can't believe it.
Shocking. I think we both know. I think we're both going Frances McDormand for Nomadland here.
Well, I mean, in my defense, I've only seen Nomadland out of all of these movies, so yeah, she's obviously my forefront runner. But if Carey Mulligan were to win, because it's honestly going to be between the two of them, I wouldn't really have a problem with that either. Because not only do you take a rape and revenge movie in the vein of a thriller, but also as a romantic comedy. And what makes her character, from what I understand, so riveting is that whenever she's the romantic lead or this stalker / avenger, what makes her equally funny and intimidating was that she's so deadpan in her line delivery, which I gotta admit actually does work on both cylinders. And it's really hard to do that given the subject matter, but it also makes sense considering her backstory is so traumatizing that nothing really seems to faze her anymore. And if it does, she's learned how not to show it, or at least she wants to be unable to show it. So technically Carey Mulligan would have more to prove, but Frances McDormand, I would much rather see win, just because her performances in Fargo and Three Billboards were definitely well-deserved in my opinion. But with Fargo, it has that lighthearted soft-spokenness that you see a little bit in Nomadland, and in Three Billboards it has that more tragic element. And I think Nomadland combines those two perfectly, and there are so many scenes that go by where Frances McDormand doesn't have to say a single word, and I still felt for her every single second. Some of them were pretty obvious. I mean, who wouldn't feel bad about someone shitting in a bucket in the middle of their car in the middle of nowhere? But like at the same time, the fact that she chooses this life over a committed life in a house with a group of people in their lives, that's a really hard arc to communicate. And it's one that can make people see her as unlikable because she's so antisocial. But at the same time, it's just because she still, even at her old age, is still trying to figure out what she wants in life. And it feels reassuring to see a character like that go through such personal and relatable struggles.
I also do think that Vanessa Kirby was an oddball one. That was a Netflix movie for Pieces of a Woman there, and it's just sort of a random oddball pick to put in. I have not seen The United States versus Billie Holiday. I have never even heard of it until the Oscar nominated. Do you know anything about this movie?
It comes to us from Lee Daniels, the director of Precious, The Butler, and The Paperboy. So, dude's kind of a pretty melodramatic director.
All right.
And from what I understand, Andra Day's performance is apparently the only good thing about it, because otherwise it's your standard run-of-the-mill biopic, especially about like the civil rights movement. But you know what? I haven't seen it. I can't judge her performance fairly. I know it won the Golden Globe, and everybody just sat there and like, really? You gave that over Frances McDormand and Carey Mulligan? So I think people are needlessly scared about that, but at the same time, it's the fucking Golden Globes. They nominated James Corden for The Prom, and everybody freaked out about that.
What is The Prom?
That is James Corden, Nicole Kidman, Meryl Streep, and Andrew Rannells as failing Broadway stars who go to Ohio because this one gay girl is prohibited from going to the school dance because she has a girlfriend, which in 2020s, how does this plot make sense? Like if it were the 80s and Footloose, like that would kind of make sense, but like everyone has cell phones, everyone has social media. All these actors have to do is tweet, "I don't like this," and the school would change. I mean,
yeah.
I know there are some people who will be like, well, not in the Deep South or not in this and that, but it's just like, we're not going to know unless it actually happens. But,
I mean, Viola Davis could be the underground pick, but definitely Frances McDormand or Carey Mulligan in here, as those are the big leading movies of the year. For actress in a supporting role, I'm gonna butcher this name, I'm sorry, Maria Bavaklava for Borat, Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy, Olivia Coleman for The Father, Amanda Seyfried for Mank, and Yu Jung-hoon for Minari. I hope I got that last name right. Did I come close?
I tried looking up that pronunciation before I made my review, but like all the pronunciation websites completely suck. They're all automated. I don't know why I trust those. I try to look up interviews of actors when I do a review of them. When I did One Night in Miami, I looked up interviews of every single lead actor to make sure I got them right, and thankfully I was.
Well, this is an interesting category because you got Borat in here, which, as you mentioned, was nominated for its original run. That's a ridiculously long title. I don't want to be the person to have to write that in the movie trivia schmodown because I feel like that's a question. Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy. That's a really interesting pick. Tyler?
Well, here's why. The big twist is that for this specific performance, Glenn Close got nominated for an Oscar and for a Razzie. That really sums up how people are so fucking split over this movie. Because some people give credit to Amy Adams and Glenn Close for trying their hardest. The big complaint everybody has is that it's either incredibly melodramatic and over the top, even by Hollywood standards, or they're picking on it because the real life guy J.D. Vance is a Republican, which that's a cheap reason to hate on a movie. Like over the top and overacted, which I mean, it's made by Ron Howard, and even though Ron Howard used to be a really good director, he's taken a huge dive since, and I don't know what went wrong with this one. But
Ron Howard used to make great movies.
Yeah,
he used to make great movies.
Director for A Beautiful Mind. It's not
Apollo 11 was wonderful. He did that with 2007 or something. Rush was pretty good.
Right. Yeah.
He was. I think it's just hit or miss for him. So at this point, Yeah, I really got to go with Olivia Coleman because she just every performance she does, whether you've seen the movie or not, everything she does, she literally puts 100% into, and she's either terrifying or entrancing. Everything she does, she's committed to, and she does not take acting lightly in any means. I imagine being on set with her would be like, "You're laughing. I'm in character. Don't do that." I just feel like that's how she is. She's like, "This is a serious thing. If we're doing a comedy, we laugh." I just feel like she's got this because she won for The Favorite. So I mean, she's already in the Academy's hearts and minds there, and I don't think Amanda Seyfried has the favor of the Academy as she did teen movies for many years. Not that they were bad by any means, and Mean Girls and such, but I just don't think that's Academy worthy of many things. So I think there's like be like, oh, the person from Mean Girls, okay. I think it's good to see her in a different turn, but I think Olivia Coleman takes this home.
Well, that's the thing. Like, Amanda Seyfried's biggest thing going for it is that this is such a huge change of pace for her as an actress. I mean, when Whoopi Goldberg went from being a stand-up comedian to her very first movie, The Color Purple, which ended up being her first Oscar nomination.
That's fair.
The Academy really likes it when people switch gears career-wise. I mean, look at Matthew McConaughey and how he went from the shirtless guy to the shirtless guy dying of HIV and AIDS in the Dallas Buyers Club. And plus, Whoopi eventually got her Oscar by being herself in a movie that like does not demand her to be yourself, which was the greatest thing Ghost had going for it. Plus, Amanda Seyfried might have actually been a little bit better than Gary Oldman as Mank because she completely disappeared into the role as this supposedly ditzy, dumb blonde actress who does have a lot on her mind, a lot that's different from others on her mind, but she's very casually afraid of showing it. She kind of just brushes it off whenever anyone questions her, and it's a very they find a way to make it sympathetic based on everything that was going on, especially with the Hollywood blacklisting. Plus, she actually had really good friendly chemistry with Gary Oldman. I love the fact that they didn't romanticize the relationship like most true life stories, and I think that's mostly because David Fincher is as committed to the truth as possible when he makes a biopic, especially with The Social Network. What you were saying about Olivia Coleman, I do like that she got nominated for this because as opposed to her role in The Favorite or her role in The Crown, where I can't remember who she plays in The Crown, but with her performance in The Father, we get to see her play someone much more sympathetic and realistic, someone who's just an everyday woman dealing with a father with Alzheimer's. That's something that anyone can really relate to. We can't really relate to a queen who may or may not have been bisexual and may or may not have been completely batshit insane regardless.
Yeah, I just think this is maybe, but then the underdog is Minari could win for Best Supporting Actress, or you don't know.
I'm really glad that she got nominated because she had like the perfect balance of comedy and drama within her scenes. Because Stephen Ewan and his wife were mainly more dramatic, but because she's the grandma, she's there to babysit the kids. She has to have a much more levity, even when her grandkids are questioning her for allegedly being too Korean. The youngest kid that is on all the Minari posters, he's the only member of the family who was born and raised in America, so the cultural barriers are a little difficult for him. The only thing he really knows Korean-wise is the language. So whenever he sees her not baking cookies or wearing men's boxer shorts or stuff like that, he's very open to criticize her, but she understands that he's just a 5-year-old kid, and she's incredibly patient and understanding with him. She's such an endearing character, and she was definitely the heart of the film for me. So I'm glad she got nominated.
Yeah, then we have a very surprising category here, Tyler. I say that sarcastically. Best Animated Feature Film. Onward. Over the Moon. A movie I never knew existed, because I didn't think... Shaun the Sheep the movie, Farmageddon. Soul and Wolfwalkers. If I had put my money on anything, Best Animated Feature always goes to Pixar. I'm just giving it to Soul. I know, and I want to let you, and I love Soul. I'll talk about Soul for a minute, and then you can talk about why Wolfwalkers should win Best Picture, Animated Picture here. I think Soul, I love the jazz infusion. I've just been recently getting into jazz myself, and I love the character of of everything they're doing with this, and just it's fun and quirky. And sure, there are a few letdowns. I'm not a big fan of the cat bits and such, but I like the message the movie has. It's a Pixar movie. It made me cry. I think it was well cast. I think it was fun. I honestly would watch it again. I have. It's probably my favorite Pixar movie in years because I love jazz. I always have. I always love classical or instrumentals or movie soundtracks. So for me, getting into jazz or Afro jazz or free jazz instead of the other word that we're not supposed to say, or any of these early type of jazz acts, the way they infuse all this type of music into this movie and creating this sort of lost soul with this it's just beautiful and wonderful. And I do think this should win Best Animated Picture. And yes, I have seen Wolfwalkers, but I want to save that for you. I hope that I know that Soul's going to win it, but if Wolfwalkers won, I would not be upset. Pixar usually wins. They don't have to try. They just are at this point in time. Not that that's a bad thing. I think that Over the Moon, I think that's too small to get the vote, and I think that Onward is Disney. I don't know, went straight to streaming. I don't know who saw that and really loved it. I like the concept of D&D. I watched it. It was fun. It was all right. Nothing wrong with it, but I think that Soul takes it. But I know you love Wolfwalkers, so you just go ahead and talk about this.
Well, I mean, my biggest problem with Best Animated Feature is that no matter who wins, it's always fucking computer animated and nothing more. Which, don't get me wrong, there are computer animated movies that have won fair and square, like Shrek, or just about the majority of Pixar movies. There are ones that I don't think shouldn't have won, like WALL-E. I've never liked WALL-E. That was the year I
Thank you. I hate that movie. I don't know why people like it. I don't get it. What is the big deal about a robot cleaning up trash? I don't get it. It parallels Earth? Oh no, we're all fat and old. Big deal.
Because save the environment. We always have to preach it because allegedly that'll get the people who were never listening before and are never going to listen to again. That'll somehow get their attention.
I'd rather watch Hoot 2, Save More Baby Owls.
That would have to exist, or you would have to make a fan version. Please don't make a fan version.
No. Anyway, Wolfwalkers has some of the best animation this year.
Here's the thing, I'm not preaching Wolfwalkers just because it is a 2D animated film, which, again, does not get enough love. The only movie that has ever won 2D from beginning to end was Spirited Away, which... It's okay. I like Studio Ghibli, but it's never been one of my favorites.
Kubo and the Two Strings didn't win?
No, it did not. That was the
That's a shame. That's a shame.
Yeah, which, again, only in computer animation. 2D never gets nominated. Stop motion has won one. I think that was the year Wallace and Gromit. Yeah, Wallace and Gromit is the only stop motion movie that has ever won.
Oh.
Out of all the award categories that the Academy has been accused of being biased, animated feature is the one that you cannot hide from whatsoever. It is abundantly clear they give a shit only about Pixar. Last year it was Toy Story 4 that won, which, don't get me wrong, I liked it, but Klaus should have won because Klaus, even though it was cliched, it still had elements that had every aspect of a Pixar movie in it. It had such lovable characters. It had darker character drama. It had the cliches that make me bang my head against the wall like The Liar Revealed. Why is that in every fucking kids movie? It's fucking insane. But where was I? Oh yeah, Wolfwalkers. The reason I preferred Wolfwalkers over Soul is that, for starters, Wolfwalkers was explicitly clear. They knew that there were some familiar elements to it. The studio Cartoon Saloon already has its own formula where a kid who is unaccustomed to spirituality encounters a mythical being or whatever, and this mythical being is always a girl that they strike up a friendship with. There are some environmental themes that are very reminiscent of Miyazaki. In fact, their movies get compared to Studio Ghibli all the time, the way that Secret of Kells is apparently like Nausicaa, Song of the Sea, Spirited Away. Wolfwalkers is Princess Mononoke, but what I loved about Wolfwalkers was that it took chances with the material. It was much more of a drama with action sequences as opposed to a lighthearted comedy that had dramatic moments. They treated the kids and adults with equal amounts of respect. Even characters that are cliched, like Sean Bean as the main character's father, the skeptic who keeps saying, "Don't go anywhere, don't do this because I say so." It's abundantly clear it's not because he doesn't believe her, it's because there is a mountain of disagreeing soldiers and rulers who will imprison and or kill them. It's clear that he does it out of genuine love. Plus, the Wolfwalkers mythology, the way Cartoon Saloon animates the environment in such a storybook fashion where you can actually see the unfinished lines and circles around them that makes them look like half a storyboard and half a completed movie. It's such a unique animation style. They do so many experimental things combined with familiar elements, and to me that's what makes it a much more unique film. Soul is absolutely great. For the first half hour and for the last half hour, I was either smiling, laughing, or crying because it was just so beautiful. Jamie Foxx was great. Tina Fey gives her best performance. It has some of Pete Docter's best animation and imagination. And of course, Atticus Ross and John Batiste's music was phenomenal. Some of the best Pixar music that has ever existed. But the middle portion with the body swapping and with the villain, it felt completely flat. And it bugs me that everyone keeps calling it like unique and one of its most original movies. It's not. As everyone's pointed out, there are a ton of similarities to this and Inside Out. And don't get me wrong, I like this more than Inside Out. And if I'm being honest, I think Inside Out is one of the most overrated Pixar movies. It is good, but I didn't give a shit for the characters as much as I did in any other Pete Docter movie. And with Soul, it made me realize that Pete Docter has a very specific formula where it's about two main characters and a sidekick, whether it's a little girl, a dog with a talking collar, or in Soul's case, the third person is really just one of the two main characters in its bodies. So yeah, like every director has their formula. I'm not really complaining about it, but Soul had me open my eyes in ways that were great, but in ways that were a little distracting. So
yeah, I think Soul's going to take it, but if Wolfwalkers won, I would not be upset. So here's a fun category. Cinematography. The nominees are Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, News of the World, Nomadland, and Chicago 7. Aaron Sorkin is not a director.
No.
He's not. He's a writer. So the fact that this is nominated is slightly insane. Mank has fair shots. I will give Mank that it does do black and white in a unique way, and they have these big sweeping movie sets. But I feel like Nomadland takes it because of the Nomadland needs the sweeping cinematography to create and paint the picture of being unemployed and living in a trailer and the effects it has on the town, the Allentown of Billy Joel songs, if you would. And it needs that cinematography to create and paint that picture. And they would nominate Nomadland if the cinematography did add and contribute to the way the story tells the sadness, the loneliness, the way these characters feel isolated. If it wasn't so important to the story, I think it goes to Nomadland. That's my thoughts, but what do you think?
Oh, I absolutely hope so. You're absolutely right about capturing isolation in such a vast and huge amount of locations. Like everyone describes Nomadland as like a modern Western because of how much you see her strolling around in the terrains and the woods and just every single environment you can think of. And it's all captured beautifully. It's what I call stabilized handheld camera work because that's Chloe Zhao's main frame of reference. She likes to film them in these sweeping, almost Terrence Malick shots that are much more composed. She knows when to incorporate a close-up shot in order to emphasize Frances McDormand's thoughts and feelings without her speaking, and then it'll cut to a wide open shot of anything as mundane as you can possibly get. Her just reading a book in a laundromat as she's waiting for her clothes to dry. That is such a great but still simple shot because it captures everything that she's going through in a matter of a couple seconds. And it definitely helps that some scenes are beginning, middle, and end within one shot. There's that great moment where she's cleaning the bathroom, but a guy goes in to take a piss anyways. That's the beginning, him walking into the bathroom, the middle of him blatantly ignoring her demands, and the end of her just flat out walking out. It worked for great comedic effect, and all that they had to do was use that one specific shot. And if I had to go for a close second, it would probably be Judas and the Black Messiah because the cinematography was really well done. It knows when to keep the camera locked down. It knows when to zoom in on a close-up. There's this one great shot where Lakeith gets arrested and there's a close-up of his foot, and there's also a pile of blood that is dripping from his nose, but you don't see that right away. And it does have some more handheld, almost documentary style fashion. There are a lot of over the shoulder shots that make us feel like we're spying on these characters, which is very fitting because Lakeith is spying within the Black Panther party. So it does add to the claustrophobia and the paranoia that O'Neill is going through as a character. And it even incorporates the violent scenes very well. Whenever there's a police raid or a shootout, you can see everything as crystal clear as you can possibly get. It looks beautiful in such a haunting and unsettling way. There were moments where I definitely tensed up. Like I said, because of the opinions that it has that I don't really think are accurate, it kind of took me out of it. But judging the cinematography alone, it is absolutely Oscar worthy. And I felt that like 5 minutes in. That was how good of a camera work it was. And you're absolutely right. Aaron Sorkin is not a director. It would be one thing if you hired a cinematographer who knew what the fuck they were doing and actually knew how his shows like West Wing or even movies like Steve Jobs were shot, where there were a lot of long takes that kind of worked like a Spielberg one, where they go from different camera setups within the exact same shot to make it feel like there was actual editing, but they don't. If anything, Molly's Game was better directed, which...
To be fair, the cinematographer he did hire did walk the line Ford v Ferrari in Nebraska. So he has done some decent stuff, but just one-room courtroom dramas are are hard to master for the best of them. But Joshua James Richards, who did Nomadland cinematography, did 2017's one of the most underrated films. I don't know if you've seen it, God's Own Country.
I haven't heard of it.
So God's Own Country is immigrant comes to Romania, and it's this big sweeping landscape. It's on the coast, and it's a love story between him and this guy Joshua. It's beautiful. It's silent. It's very similar to Nomadland in its conception because it's very limited on the dialogue, and it's all about the characters interacting. The way he does his night shooting is absolutely incredible. If you haven't seen this, we played it at the Princess for 4 or 5 days. Small indie movie. I'm glad this guy's finally getting credit because it's incredible. The cinematography on this movie alone is worth the price of admission. So I hope he gets it.
The name of that movie because I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, God's Own Country. It's from 2017. I'll fire it to you later. This one should be interesting. I think I know what it is, but costume design. We have the nominees are Emma, Ma Rainey, Mank, Mulan, and Pinocchio. Yes, Pinocchio was nominated. Do you have any thoughts on this category before I jump in?
Honestly, I think I've only seen one of those movies, which was Emma, it was okay. I didn't fall in love with it, maybe because I'm not really into Jane Austen and her writing, but when it came to the costume design, that was one of the best aspects of the movie. The overall visual style of the film looked absolutely beautiful. The costumes had so much bright and vibrant colors to them that you don't see in modern movies nowadays. Whenever you see like a Marvel or a DC movie, all the costumes have this like monochromatic gray look to it that just is fucking ugly. And I don't really understand why modern movies are going towards that level of costume design. Hell, Baby Driver had more colorful costume design, and it had more to do with the character development because Jamie Foxx wearing his all-red costume was just a sign of how much insane violence and rage was within him, how Kevin Spacey is mainly dressed or surrounded by green because dude's a greedy bastard, or of course, Baby walking around in a black and white vest because he views the world as black and white, but once he meets Lily James, his costumes become considerably more gray because he realizes he tends to be just as bad as the people he refuses to be associated with. It's a great example of how costume design should really be focused on every movie, not just period pieces, because that's the one thing about costume design. It's always period pieces that get nominated.
Yes, it is.
Which, don't get me wrong, replicating the history is not an easy task, and the fact that any of these guys did such a flawless job, that goes without saying. It's commendable. The costumes in Mank were really well done. The black and white cinematography kind of hides that a little bit the more I think about it, but at the same time, like, you can tell looking at their clothing that they didn't buy them yesterday, so that part definitely goes without saying. And Mulan is a period piece, so it got nominated.
Yeah, I'm looking at these, and I'm going the one that if anyone is ever nominated, Sandy Powell has won so many awards for this. She's not in the category run this year, so I'm going with Alexandra Byrne for Emma, strictly because basically looking at her filmography, she did Phantom of the Opera. She's done some classical stuff, but she's also done Marvel. And I think if Emma gets anything, Emma's not a bad movie by any means. I think Emma's all right. I think it's a good adaptation of Jane Austen. And myself, I like some Jane Austen, but not everything. I think Jane Austen always takes it. The Favorite takes it. You take the period costume piece, like you were saying. As much as we want to give it to something else, the period pieces usually sort of take that extravagant look at that. So after a brief internet interruption and about 24 hours between us, we're back to jump right back into it. So Tyler, for Best Director, that's where we left off yesterday.
What's that?
Yeah, we did costume design, and after costume design was directing.
See, I didn't hear a damn thing you said about costume design because that was when it all happened. So.
Oh, well, I just said that Emma was going to win costume design because it's a period piece.
Of course it will.
So, and I didn't really think about Pinocchio because it's Pinocchio. Anyway.
I can't believe Roberto Benigni has done 2 Pinocchio movies. That's just...
Yes.
From what I understand, this one was significantly better. That's all I know for sure.
Well, regardless, there's one surprise in directing here because I'd never heard of this movie. Another Round, Mank.
Oh, you haven't?
Minari, Nomadland, and Promising Young Woman. So fill me in on Another Round. What is this thing that I haven't quite heard of?
So Another Round is actually a Danish drama starring Mads Mikkelsen alongside 3 others who play like mid-30s to early 40s high school teachers who are all going through a midlife crisis. Their family lives are boring as hell. Their students do not respect them in the slightest. And during a birthday dinner, one of them reads this probably pseudoscientific article suggesting that if you were to drink a small amount of alcohol, like every hour or so daily, your mind becomes a lot more focused and concentrated. You're much more energetic. So they decide to give it a go for the sake of bringing their lives back up to fruition. And for a while, it definitely does. But as expected, there are some negative consequences, like when they start to break their own rules, because they do try to be smart about it. They try to write their own scientific peer-reviewed article. They try to set guidelines like no drinking after 8 o'clock because they don't want to get shit, want to become alcoholics. But needless to say, some of them give in to the peer pressure of their daily lives and continue to do so. They get into some trouble with the school, and it has, in my opinion, one of Mads Mikkelsen's best performances, because what I said about Olivia Coleman being nominated for The Father, she gets to be a much more sympathetic character as opposed to a psychotic villain or just an all-around bitch like everything else she's in. Same thing goes for Mads Mikkelsen. Everyone remembers him as Hannibal Lecter, and I've only seen a couple episodes, and dude was pretty good. It was his own interpretation, and he did a spot-on job, but I've always wanted to see him just play an ordinary guy. In between Another Round and The Hunt, and I think the guy who directed The Hunt actually directed this too, so that would make sense. Thomas Vinterberg, hopefully I got that
That
right.
sounds pretty accurate.
But dude knows how to get really natural performances as actors. There's a lot more comedy to it than you might expect from a movie about alcoholism, but probably thing this movie had going for it was that it was very ambiguous about what makes an alcoholic and what exactly are the right or wrong ways of addressing it. Because, long story short, the ending kind of leaves it up in the air if the characters that are still with us have actually learned anything in the process. And I don't know if that much really stood out about the direction personally, but there was one really interesting thing where, as the characters were chronicling their every time they take a drink in a given hour, the screen will cut to black and it will show the blood alcohol content that they're at, like establish whether or not they're following the rules or not. And there are also moments where it cuts to black and it almost seems like a keyboard when they're typing out their peer-reviewed article, whenever they're making progress or whenever they're deciding to maybe step aside for a while. So there are definitely some good directing techniques. I don't know if it was like best director worthy, but it was a pleasant surprise.
But yeah, we also have Mank, Minari, Nomadland, and Promising Young Woman. Now, this is where I think that Mank takes it, because classic Hollywood's about a writer-director. I think based upon the content, it has it, but I would not be surprised if Nomadland just took it straight up. But I can see Mank being the very safe choice here, because it's about classic Hollywood. And it's David Fincher.
See, it's such a safe choice that I can't really see them going along with it. Plus, David Fincher's been nominated for Benjamin Button and The Social Network, so I feel like dude's already had his luck in a given scenario. Plus, everyone keeps saying this, and I've said it too, it's not one of his best movies. It's middle ground, if I gotta be honest. I like it more than The Social Network, but that's mostly just because I've gotten so sick of Aaron Sorkin being hailed as such a great screenwriter when dude is incredibly pretentious and preachy. And yes, his writing is how we want to speak as opposed to how we speak. But you know what? It gets old after a while, but that's just my thing. Plus, what we were saying about how some awards are given based on inclusiveness, there's a lot of press going around about how Chloe Zhao and Emerald Fennell are like, this is apparently the first time in 90 some years that two women have been nominated in the same category, which, don't get me wrong, I have no problem with, but can we please stop pretending like they did this because they're female filmmakers and they probably did this because they're incredibly good at their job? And here's the thing, you don't need an Oscar or an Oscar nomination to be a great director, let alone a great director by your gender. I get so sick of people judging it by this, and don't get me wrong, I get why, and it should happen more often, but at the same time, these are award shows. They're subjective. They're based on personal opinions of people we don't know and are never going to know. And judging by how everyone complains on Twitter and Facebook, chances are we wouldn't even want to get to know these people anyways.
Yeah, but I think Mank or Nomadland's going to take it. What are your thoughts on Best Director?
I would love if Chloe Zhao directed this, which is interesting because I've never seen any of her other movies. I've never seen The Rider. I've only heard of her for the first time when I discovered that she was directing The Eternals, and I didn't really look into her filmography that much, but her filmmaking style reminds me so much of Lynn Ramsey, not just the way that she mixes in professional and non-professional actors. There's this high emphasis on close-ups that show half a character's face but not completely, in order to leave some mystery in regards to what the characters are going through, even though the shots do give us a semblance of what they're thinking in a given moment. I can't believe Lynn Ramsey has never been nominated for an Oscar, as much as I just complained.
You were never really here, wasn't nominated?
It was not nominated for anything. I thought she would have gotten...
Too bad. That's a great flick. That's a phenomenal flick. Okay.
I thought she would have gotten something for at least We Need to Talk About Kevin. Like, Tilda Swinton should have been nominated for that.
Well, The Rider is actually really, really great. It's a horse movie about, this guy riding a horse, and it's got your twists and turns. It's your drama sort of thing, but it's done in a very different way that has a different voice, and I like it very much. So we played it at the Princess. It was very, very popular there. We played it for like a month. Really? So people could not stop watching this movie. So, which is great. Definitely what we thought for the Best Director category, except for Another Round. I didn't see that one coming. So
yeah, and you know what? I do appreciate the direction with Minari. Lee Isaac Chung did such a good job of making nearly every shot look like a portrait. There's like so many shots of vast open space to make our characters feel incredibly isolated because they're incredibly new to the environment that they're in. I said this about Uncle Frank, and it's absolutely true here. It's one of the few movies that makes the South look absolutely lush and beautiful. Whenever you see something in the Deep South, it's either really brown or really gray to emphasize the darker historical aspects of the Deep South. But here it really emphasizes just how much beautiful environment that there is, and really no wonder that it's such a great agricultural space.
So the next category we have here is film editing. We have The Father. We have Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and The Trial of the Chicago 7. Now I was looking at this and I thought, what are they going to give it to? I 100% think it's going to go to The Sound of Metal, and here's why. Because The Sound of Metal is all about music, so it's editing from point A to point B. And if that means the movie's going to move to the beat of the music or the beat of the characters talking and such, and it's going to be very a rhythmic emotion. And if they are going to give it to Damn Bohemian Rhapsody, they will give it to this one, straight up. They love their music, 100%. So, I'm going with Sound of Metal here. I do think that probably Promising Young Woman is a close second.
Really, I was going to say that The Father was a close second, because I mean, when you're portraying a character that's going through Alzheimer's, and there are going to be scenarios where he thinks he's talking to someone or is reliving a distant memory, and then it turns out that's not what really happened, editing is incredibly crucial, and it definitely explains why The Father got nominated in that category. And there was another movie that basically had the exact similar plot that I saw at TIFF called Falling, that was directed by Viggo Mortensen.
Oh yeah, you mentioned this.
It's something really interesting where it did the very abrupt cutting back and forth between the flashbacks and the present day, or once in a while there would be some POV shots whenever Lance Henriksen and Mortensen are arguing, because they have a very tense relationship. And the editing was frustrating, but kind of in a good way. It was kind of what Josh Trank was trying to do with his Al Capone biopic, where he kept going back and forth for really no reason, and was also trying to show the deterioration of a man. But that failed significantly, from what I understand.
Yeah, no, I just think because music and previously the one that wins film editing wins best sound. Ford v Ferrari won best editing and best sound. So, and Bohemian Rhapsody won best editing and best sound. Based upon the history of the Academy, they usually go hand in hand. So I thought, what would be best sound mixing? Well, Sound of Metal, obviously. So I know it's a cop out, and
no, that makes sense.
So yeah, that's my thought of any rate. We're gonna skip best. There's a few of these we're skipping. Hair and makeup, I don't really care about. But best original score, we have The Five Bloods, Mank, Minari, News of the World, and Soul. I think Soul takes it. I just because it's the most well known on the list. Straight up, if anyone was gonna say, what do I know? I know Soul. I've seen Soul. My kid's seen Soul. My grandma watched Soul. It's the most well known, and for notoriety, I give it best original score. Thoughts, Tyler?
Well, I mean, Soul is definitely the most popular choice, and to its credit, like, the musicians responsible for the score are really talented individuals. Atticus and Ross, I believe, are the names. They're a duo that usually provide the scores for a lot of David Fincher movies. So that really
Trent Reznor of Nine Inch Nails, Atticus Ross, and John Batiste.
Yeah, so I was right about the Atticus and Ross. Yeah. And are they nominated for Mank? Because I think they did that too. They
are nominated for Mank, yes.
So they're nominated in 2 categories, which really just goes to show how talented of musicians they are. And I am glad that John Batiste got nominated, even though due to his incredibly fucking annoying on The Late Show, it actually makes me glad that they're socially distancing everyone on The Late Show, which means Colbert doesn't have to listen to Batiste with their fucking Trump joke. I'm also glad they didn't give him a part in the movie and just gave it to Questlove, because Questlove's only in it for 5 minutes. He still does a decent. Oh yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing: if it wasn't Soul, I would actually say Minari, because it actually has a very minimalist piano music that reminded me a lot of the score in Nomadland, which I mean, in Nomadland, you don't really pay attention to the score because it's in it for like 10 minutes over the course of a 2-hour movie. But like, what was great about the score in Nomadland was that it felt absolutely necessary whenever they added it in. And the same thing goes for Minari. It has this incredibly beautiful, bittersweet melancholy sound to it because those are really the feelings that everyone's going through. And just like Nomadland, it also uses the score sparingly to just let the silence speak for itself. But I think that's actually what makes the score in that a lot more essential. So it would either be Soul or Minari for me. I'm not surprised that News of the World got nominated because usually in a Tom Hanks feel-good movie, that's usually the way to go, especially if you're Alan Silvestri and you did that great musical score for Scum.
Yeah, the next one is interesting here. So best original song. This is always the one where they play during the Oscars and they talk and here you go. So we got Fight for You from Judas and the Black Messiah, Hear My Voice from Trial of the Chicago 7, Hosvok from Eurovision, and we're just going to pause for a minute there.
I knew you were going to do this.
If Eurovision wins a freaking Oscar for being the dumbest, stupidest, worst, unfunny, most awkward comedy of the year, I've had farts that were funnier in my sleep or when I'm having sex with my wife. This is not a good movie. This is a awkward, boring, weird piece with Will Ferrell dressed as a Viking, a freaking Viking, which, if I can do a hashtag Me Too, cancel him, because Vikings from Greenland and Iceland in 17 whatever are like, no, we don't like that representation. Rachel, whatever her name is a complete waste of talent in this movie. It's like America's Got Talent if it had no talent. It's like America's Got Talent if Nick Cannon still hosted this freaking movie. If you nominate this thing, you think that they should I'd rather give Gotti a freaking Oscar for Best Original Song where John Travolta just mumbles and we call it a mumble rap. We can call it something like the Gucci Gang 2. I don't know, but don't give this a freaking Oscar. We also have Life Ahead and Speak Now. I give it to One Night in Miami because of the cultural significance, but please do not give Eurovision this Oscar. I hate this thing with a passion.
Cultural significance is the only reason half of these songs got nominated, so that part really goes without saying.
But no, Eurovision pisses me off.
Oh, based on these titles, I can't even fucking... I didn't even hear that song that Leslie Odom sang in the movie. Because all this is Sam Cooke music, which figures plays fucking Sam Cooke. But yeah, and I don't even remember any original songs even playing in Judas and the Black Messiah. It must have been an end credits thing.
Yeah, they're probably credits. No, but I say Leslie Odom Jr. and if it's because it's Sam Cooke. It's yeah, because it's Elton John won Best Original Song, Bohemian Rhapsody. You know, all these things. Well, they didn't have an original song, but everything that is a music biopic, they usually win Best Original Song. But please don't give it to Eurovision. I'm begging you, please.
Here's the thing. Elton John didn't just win Best Original Song for his own movie, which, don't get me wrong, he wrote a song about himself, which...
Yes, he did.
Really call that cheap.
Great track.
Don't forget, he's the one that gave us Can You Feel the Night twice and won the Oscar for his version, Was It All His concert. It's an end credit song, which, don't get me wrong, love that song. In fact, I love his version more than the movie's version, if I gotta be honest. But yeah, I can't even decide because it's so blatantly obvious why they nominated all these songs, which, look, have I listened to them? No. Is it fair for me to judge them? No. So I'm not going to do it. It's just, can you blame me for not having listened to them yet?
I listened to them all. It was not a fun journey.
Of course it wasn't, which that reminds me, it's no wonder Eurovision got this nomination. They need an uplifting, happy song, which, let's be honest, how many times do uplifting, happy songs ever win in awards like this? Seriously, is it too much for the Academy to fucking lighten up once in a while?
Well, don't do it for Eurovision. Wait a year, please.
Look, that was the funniest and probably best rant you've ever made.
I'm sorry, but it's not a good movie. I like Holmes and Watson better. It's a better movie than Eurovision. No, I've watched both, and it's a better movie. They both suck, but it's a better movie.
I can't take you seriously on that. And the thing is, I watched part of Kicking and Screaming, which was actually my very first Will Ferrell movie last night. And I discovered two things. One, it really is that big of a guilty pleasure. And two, Mr. Mosby from The Sweet Life was one of the soccer parents.
If Will Ferrell was funny, he'd still be on Saturday Night Live. Anyway, moving on to Best Picture. I don't like the man, I'm sorry. We have The Father nominated, Judas and the Black Messiah, Mank, Minari, Nomadland, Promising Young Woman, Sound of Metal, and for some reason, for some god-awful reason, Trial of Chicago 7. What are your thoughts on Best Picture race here?
I got nothing. Like, it's just, we knew all of these were gonna get nominated. I mean, seriously. I mean, I can't blame the fact that there weren't that many movies released this year, so it's kind of an unfortunate disadvantage, but at the same time, like, when there's nothing to be surprised by, and that's the thing with all, whenever anyone goes, I knew they were going to call those nominations, I'm glad I called it, it's just like, yeah, that's only going to last for 5 seconds. After that, you're just going to be like, oh, yeah, I predicted all of these. Wow, great. But I've only seen like 2 or 3 of these. I have seen Nomadland. I have seen Minari. I did want to see The Father, but for whatever reason, I chose Falling, which, don't get me wrong, Falling was okay and probably took more chances than the majority of the movies that were in this list. But like I said before, even though I thought Soul was overrated, it still would have been great to see it get a nomination, because as this one, if any of you ever have heard of a channel called the Royal Ocean Film Society, they did a video about how it should have been nominated, and they also pointed out how, since the Academy is now willing to acknowledge foreign language films as Best Picture categories, and we've had Beauty and the Beast, Up, and Toy Story 3, somehow those are the only 3 animated movies that have ever been nominated for Best Picture ever. And Beauty and the Beast did not need a Best Animation category in order to get nominated because it hadn't existed yet, which really goes to show how fucking pathetic it is that animation is still completely overlooked and underutilized. It's embarrassing.
Well, there's a couple things I'm happy about with the Best Picture category. There's a few of these that I'm like, yeah, that's predictable. But in years past, they would nominate superhero movies, random superhero movies. And as much as I love Black Panther, the third act is a complete mess. I don't think it should have been nominated. I'm just glad they didn't give Wonder Woman 84 a nod. I haven't seen it, but I don't know if it's Best Picture worthy, you know? One that we're missing from here, that's missing from this, where is Palm Springs in any of this? This is possibly the best movie of last year. It's up there. It's really great. I think it's got a...
That reminds me, have we covered the screenplays at any point?
No, it's on screenplays, but you think it'd be under... it's really, really funny.
I believe you.
Also, one I recently watched, I Care a Lot. I don't know if it's eligible for Oscars, because I know it just came out recently, but pretty great film.
That's actually a good question.
I don't know if it's eligible for Oscars, but I don't see that one up here. I would put that under Best Picture if I got the chance. Other than that, you know, there's a lot of questions about this category. But I'm really glad that I know they wanted to include superhero movies and everything, minus Best Visual Effects. But some superhero movies are just not good. Some have really great parts, and some have bad parts, and yes, they're wonderful superhero movies. But are they up to sort of an Oscar-worthy pick? And which we define an Oscar-worthy pick is up to you. But I want it to be good all the way through. That's what I define an Oscar pick. So you can't just have a bad third act and hope you get a nomination. That's my thought process. But Palm Springs should have been nominated, even if we don't get a win, because in the past we've had 8th Grade get a nomination. We had Lady Bird. We had all these sort of coming-of-age comedies. And this is a comedy about 2 people falling in love. I don't know why we can't have a silly comedy with a ridiculous... I want The Lonely Island to have an Oscar nomination, straight up. And it's also a really phenomenal movie. It's great. It's phenomenal, and... I give it to The Sound of Metal because Whiplash was really, really close there. And it's a drumming movie, it's music, it's what we've seen in the past, it's predictable, it's what the Academy is going to be like, oh, this is revolutionary, people play instruments, because Apparently, that's revolutionary. Yeah, great flick. But I do think it wins it because Frances McDormand. And here's the thing: anytime Frances McDormand has a picture, whether it be Fargo, whether it be Three Billboards, she wins Best Actress, but never wins Best Picture. So
that doesn't mean it's going. That doesn't mean that's not going how it's going to happen here. Which I mean, as much as predictable as the Oscars can be, it's not like we want them all the time. And what you were saying about superhero movies, yeah, a part of that was probably just to prove that they're not complete ass kissers in regards to social dramas. But what I said about Royal Ocean Film Society, they also made some pretty valid points as to how Mission Impossible Fallout should have been nominated. That because
oh my goodness,
action films can be incredibly artistic, but it also shows that they can have great character depth because the majority of that video was basically a character study about how Ethan Hunt is probably one of the quintessential action heroes and a very reluctant hero that doesn't just lead to suspenseful set pieces, but also leads to a lot of really great physical comedy, which was something that's not only old school in regards to Hollywood, but it's something that we rarely see nowadays.
Let's just go on to Mission Impossible for a second. Mission Impossible Fallout is possibly the greatest Mission Impossible movie because it ties together the threads of his wife in number 3. It gives us some of the best action sequences of the entire series. It gives us reoccurring characters from Mission Impossible 5, which was phenomenal with the counter-operative spy there who was supposed to take the shot, but she didn't. He's hanging out of a freaking helicopter. They're trying to stop a worldwide virus. It makes it more relevant than ever. Mission Impossible is fucking dope. It's probably the greatest action franchise on screen today because Fast and Furious is fun. It's a fun franchise, no doubt there. And you have all these other ones like Triple X will pop up every few years. They are fun. Ip Man is fun. I love Ip Man. But Mission Impossible is consistently good, always upping the ante. Tom Cruise is entertaining as hell to watch, and when I think of action movies, I think of Mission Impossible. So I 100% agree that it should have got an Oscar nom. Just saying.
If you're going to give Johnny Depp an Oscar nomination for playing a pirate, why not give Tom Cruise a nomination for playing a spy? I mean, really.
Do they have a stunt category in the Oscars? Because they should. That'd be cool.
Jason Statham has been rallying for years to try to get a stunt nomination because, I mean, that is one of, if not the hardest things in filmmaking you can possibly do, and one of the most dangerous.
Oh, 100%. But yeah, so Best Picture there, who do you give it to out of all the nominees? I give it to Sound of Metal. Who would you give it to?
I would give it to Nomadland, but if Sound of Metal were to win it, I also wouldn't have a damn problem with it because that would just put me in a huge trance, but...
You alright, man? Take a breather. Breathe. Drink some water.
What do you think I've been doing this whole time?
Oh.
But, I mean, I say this every time I talk about Nomadland to someone, but the fact that I came home on a Saturday night, 9:30 at night, had to get up in the morning to go back to work, but stayed up until midnight on a TV on my bedside in the dark from 11:30, and not for a second did I ever get bored. That's just how great of a movie it is. The fact that you don't even have to see it in a theater to give it a 5 out of 5, because when the fuck do I ever do that?
So I'm going to give you a moment to get some water, and I'm going to talk about production design. So for production design, we have The Father, Ma Rainey, Mank, News of the World, and Tenet. Now, my money is either on News of the World or Mank, because News of the World is Western, so they have to do costumes and period pieces, and Mank is a 1930s Hollywood. They have the big sets, and I think this is the one that Mank wins. News of the World could very well take it, but I do think that Mank, with the big sets, the period pieces, the big parties, the mansions, the portrayal of 1930s Hollywood, this is the one that gets it. I think this is the Oscar that Mank wins, because they're going to give an Oscar to Mank no matter what we do, and I think this is the one that it gets. I think they give it to costume design or production design, because they're like, look at all these cool recreations we did. They're very, very accurate. Like the director from The Party looks at Peter Sellers and says, their attention to detail is important. He looks at his wrist and he's like, do you think they had underwater watches in 1552? And he's like, and Peter Sellers is like, no, they didn't have it. He's like, what's the time? Looks at his wrist. I give it to Mank. Tyler, how's your voice feeling?
It feels perfectly fine, thank you. And I would absolutely agree with you on Mank for all of those reasons. That plus, Mank has the most nominations this year with 10. You're right, it is going to win something. But when it comes to the production design, they had a huge canvas to cover, and they covered it in spades. It was a beautiful looking movie, especially.
100%.
I'd have to have seen the other nominations in order to judge them. And Tenet does have great production design because, I mean, it was all real. And the fact that they spent that much money to make it as grounded as possible, given the fact that this is such an implausible plot line that they have to cover. Like, I'm glad they got nominated for that of all things, especially for visual effects, because they're going to win visual effects. That part goes without saying.
100%. Best. I have not got a chance to see half the animated short films, but I've seen 2 out of the 5. So we're just gonna skip ahead. So best sound. So 100%. We got nominees: Greyhound, Mank, News of the World, Soul, Sound of Metal. I'm giving it to Sound of Metal, strictly based because that's a sound one. I've already explained I like best editing and best sound go hand in hand for many years at the Oscars. I just think Sound of Metal takes it because it's about music. Anything with music really, really takes it. I think it's a no-brainer at that point. What are your thoughts, Tyler?
Basically the exact same thing. Like, sound is a character. It is a storytelling device for the film. And I said this before we started rolling, how A Quiet Place should have won the Oscar for that specific reason. But based on probably that stupid train of thought that you just said, where sound mixing and sound editing are basically the exact same movie, or kind of like in Dunkirk where that one, because look, we can make explosions really damn loud as opposed to Baby Driver, where the sound design actually plays a part in the story. It aids the score, it aids the character development. But and the only way I can see Sound of Metal not winning best sound is because Greyhound has explosions and underwater sound effects.
If anything, I thought Tenet would be nominated for sound, but no. So, I thought Tenet would definitely be on this list. I thought Tenet and a couple of the bigger blockbusters would be on here. But no.
Well, I mean, first of all, you'd have to fucking hear what the characters are saying and for the sound to be fantastic as it was a really good score, and it's proof that Nolan doesn't need Hans Zimmer to have good music.
That's right. Yeah, that was bad. So the next category we've got is Best Visual Effects. We've got Love and the Monsters, Midnight Sky, Mulan, The One and Only Ivan, and Tenet. I'm going to give this to Tenet because they give Christopher Nolan a nod every single time. He usually wins for doing something, and I feel like he takes it for Tenet because the whole movie is about visual effects. That's literally what they do. That's Mulan's a close second. If Tenet wasn't in here, they'd give it to Mulan strictly on notoriety because I have never heard of Love and Monsters. I've seen a clip or two in a trailer of Midnight Sky, and The One and Only Man is Ivan is escaping me. I'm sure I saw a trailer at one point. I just feel like Tenet is the one that takes it.
The One and Only Ivan is that Disney Plus one where Sam Rockwell is a gorilla and Bryan Cranston is like a zookeeper in a shopping center.
Okay, I did watch that randomly one day. I don't know why.
Some screenwriter somewhere got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to write a "Why did a chicken cross the road" joke in a fucking kids movie.
Yeah, I watched it because I enjoyed Zookeeper for the stupidity of it. I wanted to see how stupid it was for talking animals. That's why I watch animal movies. I like Zookeeper better. I like Stallone as a lion. He's great.
Watch Timmy Failure. There's a walking, talking polar bear or some crap like that.
Anyway, let's get on to an interesting category. Best Adapted Screenplay. So we've got Borat, the subsequent movie, blah, 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 blah. The Father, Nomadland, One Night Miami, and The White Tiger. Now, for me, I think this is where Sasha Baron Cohen wins. And if it's not Sasha Baron Cohen, I think they give it to The Father because feel like everything else has got 1,000 awards, and I feel like The Father, they got to give Anthony Hopkins something because he's won a bunch. So this is the one where they're like, because most people like going through like, oh man, I want to give Anthony Hopkins something, but he's just not worthy in this category. And then they get to this one and they're like, well, Anthony Hopkins is in that. Let's give him that Oscar nudge. I noticed that a lot of things that are nominated for Best Picture, Best Actor, and all these things, if they don't win a thing, they get Best Screenplay. That's where they end up. That's what I've seen from the Oscars over the years.
I don't know about that. I mean, the fact that Borat got nominated for being so fucking offside about everything, although the fact that it may have been an anti-Trump and anti-Pence movie, I feel like that might have had something to do with it, especially considering they somehow got Giuliani and Mike Pence in the damn movie without them realizing it, because that's just how Sasha Baron Cohen does stuff. But it is great to see that the Academy is still nominating comedy movies. I think the reason The Father got nominated is because it's really hard to adapt a play into a movie and make it just as visual, if not verbal, which I think that's why The Father and One Night in Miami have a pretty huge shot. I would really love for One Night in Miami to win Best Adapted Screenplay, because those themes that I talked about before, how it's important to focus on the divide between to get a better understanding so that we can at least be on the same page, or at least understand why you're not on the same page. Those are really tough themes to communicate without pissing a ton of people off. And the fact that the movie script was actually written by the playwright who wrote the play, Kemp Powers, is just a testament to how good he is as a writer. Plus, Kemp Powers also co-wrote and co-directed Soul, so dude's a very talented writer, and he's getting more press, and I'm really glad to see that he's getting nominated. Again, I would love if Chloe Zhao got nominated for Nomadland, but the thing is, it's not really an adaptation of the book, because it's kind of an original character study that just happens to be based on someone who really did live as a nomad for a year. So I think that's the only reason it doesn't actually have a shot. And what were the other ones? White Tiger, Nomadland,
One Night in Miami, The Father, and Borat.
I haven't seen the White Tiger, so I couldn't tell you.
I have to figure out what the White Tiger is. I have the trailer on the server at work, but that's about all I can tell you.
Oh, you guys are kidding me. You're still there, right?
I am still there.
Okay.
And then we have Best Original Screenplay.
Guess who's gonna win that?
We have Trial of the Chicago 7, Sound of Metal, Promising Young Woman, Minari, and Judas and the Black Messiah. It's going to go to Sorkin. Because it's Sorkin.
Yeah.
That's about what I have to say on it. Because Aaron Sorkin, he's known as a writer. When people think writer, they think Aaron Sorkin. So if you haven't seen the rest, or if you had a chance to check it out, you'd be like, Sorkin? Oh, I know that name. Very familiar name. Yeah.
Look, dude used to be a talented writer. I mean, especially with A Few Good Men. That was a fucking great courtroom drama. Plus, dude turned To Kill a Mockingbird into a play. This should have been in the bag for him, but no, he just completely goes on and on with the same cliches that he always does. He always has to have the leader of the group be this incredibly full of shit genius battling with the second biggest genius, who is technically a little more humble but is also a little bit more sarcastic. There's a mentor who has to divide the two of them and say, shut the fuck up, I respect you, but for God's sake, you are incredibly fucking annoying. Which, that's the thing I can't stand about Sorkin's characters anymore. They're fucking obnoxious. Their attempts at comedy are completely lame. I didn't buy the fact that any of them had an arc for a second, again, except for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's really just a 2-hour nonstop series of quips that allegedly have to replicate especially what is going on right now today, which I didn't even buy that for a second, because there are so many things that happen in this movie that no matter how stupid people are nowadays, it wouldn't fucking happen today. And if it did, nobody would defend it. Not a fucking person. But if we're going by who I think is going to win, even though I haven't seen it, I would like Emerald Fennell to win for Best Original Screenplay because a lot of people thought the script was a game changer, not just because it was a dark comedy and a psychological thriller all at once, but all the complaints that we had in 2019 where Jennifer Kent didn't get nominated for The Nightingale along with Eileen Franciosi. It's really nice to see the Academy taking a huge chance with such a violent movie, which I'm willing to bet it wasn't as violent as Joker, and they nominated that for a lot of things last year, and for a good reason too. It's topical, but it's also topical in an entertaining, uncompromising, and morally ambiguous way. So I would really love if that script were to win out of all of them. But out of the movies that I have seen that were my favorites, it is Sound of Metal, just because it's really hard to write out these scenarios without any sound or scenes with sound, but no talking. That's an incredibly difficult thing to do from a writing perspective. And Darius Carter and Derek Cianfrance, I think, is a really talented director, and he I'm glad to see him getting Oscar consideration because dude deserves that.
Yeah, so that's it for the Oscar nominations. Now, one thing, there is only one category for sound. There is not best sound editing, it's just sound. So that's a huge improvement there. That's going to clear up. So any snubs, I'm going to say it, and I'm sure you have it on your mind, Wolfwalkers, best special effects.
I wouldn't really count it as best special effects. I would have nominated it for best original score because the Celtic music that they come up with sounds incredibly beautiful. It fits the time period very nicely. It switches from uplifting and cheerful to this really awesome epic battle sequence music that you would expect for a movie like this, where it's about humans versus a group of nature. And something I forgot to mention in my rant on Wolfwalkers, the thing that really stuck with me story-wise was that it's not really a racial tolerance story told in the vein of an environmental thing. It's really just, well, okay, yeah, it actually is, but it's not an environmental movie posing as like racial intolerance. It is racial intolerance, and not just from the perspective of appearances, basically from wherever you're from, because there's a huge divide between characters who are Irish and who are British, which is a big thing, not just from the two main characters who have excellent chemistry with each other, but also with the side characters, because there are so many random scenes to establish the atmosphere that really comes down to Brits fighting with the Irish over the most minute things, over who's the best at something. And that was what made it a much more topical movie for me personally, and it fit the drama film that had action sequences as opposed to the comedy with dramatic moments. But yeah, I would have nominated it for original score. It probably didn't, because the big theme song of the movie had already been a hit song in Ireland, I think. So might have been one thing.
I would also say that I would give Downhill best adapted screenplay nomination, because it was a fairly good screenplay. It had some very dramatic moments, and it fits the Academy's. Yeah, but we're running, and On the Rocks was a pretty great screenplay. I would give Rashida Jones best supporting actress nomination as well. Really? She did a pretty good job in there as this person who's doing this, and she has to struggle with her abandonment father and her boyfriend there, and it made the Wayans not stupid.
While we're on that subject, I knew it wasn't going to get nominated, but I would have liked if John David Washington or Zendaya especially got nominated for Malcolm and Marie. I know that the rant sequence against movie critics at the beginning and the middle might have cost them a best original screenplay on Sam Levinson's part, because since he's white and he wrote it, allegedly it was his idea, even though Zendaya, the black producer who told him to write the fucking movie and probably didn't know well what he was writing, especially since John David Washington, the things that he ranted about in the movie, Denzel has been very politely and quietly been ranting about his entire career. So it's not like it's not the movie's fault that you guys refuse to fucking listen to them. I mean, you guys go around saying they're the ones who should be talking, we're the ones who should be listening to them. We fucking did. Practice what you preach, bitch.
Yeah, I definitely give Malcolm and Marie a nod. I'd also give Best Original Song, Bill and Ted. It came out. It was a fun song. Put that in there over Eurovision any day. It's just a fun song about uniting the world through music. Excuse me, you're nominating Eurovision, but you need to put Bill and Ted in that category. And Palm Springs for Best Original Screenplay. Straight up, it needs that nomination. I know it's not going to get everything, but that was a great screenplay. That was a funny movie, and it goes back to the screenplay. But yeah, I'm really glad that they removed Best Sound Editing and Best Sound Mixing, and it's just sound this year. They didn't announce that or anything. It's there. I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I found that really weird.
Yeah, we'll have to do a breakdown of the best animated and live action shorts when we get to see them, but unfortunately, those are not available to us at this moment.
I don't think they're going to be for a while, but...
No. If we can open, we can play them.
Here's the thing. I've never really paid close attention to those categories in particular. Not because I don't like the shorts. I mean, there are plenty of Pixar shorts put before their movies. That one short that played before The Incredibles 2, where the lady raises playing like a kid, and then I forget what even happens because it was so fucking weird, and everybody in the theater was just thrown for a loop by what happened. But that just really went to show how great of a short it was.
Yeah, well, this is everyone's always documentary, Oscar shorts, and Oscar animation. Those are the three categories where you win and lose your Oscar bets. Those are the ones, if you can nail, you win and lose your Oscar bets. That's how every single year I usually come really close or win my Oscar bets, because I nail the best animated shorts.
Really?
Yeah, that's where I win and lose my Oscar bets, because I always make a little bit of bet on there for, just a little bit on the side with my coworkers or someone I know, and we're like, no, we'll do $5 or whatever, nothing major, and it comes down to the Oscar shorts, and I have enough to go buy a coffee and a donut. It's great. But the Oscar nominations are incredibly safe this year. This is a safe bet of Oscar bets. I'm not super thrilled with all of them. I'd like to see Palm Springs get a few more. But honestly, it was a weird year. We got some pretty good movies out of it regardless. So, that's basically the end of the show, guys. I thought there'd be more, but when I was scrolling down on the Oscar site, it just stopped. We didn't cover 3 categories, so we got through everything. I will do an individual video covering the documentaries, the Oscar shorts, and those. Tyler may join me, but he has to have seen those, because I love covering the smaller stuff. But yes, this is it for the 2021 Oscars, the 2020 extended. You get the idea. If you are, and if we are open, if it is safe, and if you come to the Princess Cinemas on Oscar night, I will be there hosting if we can do it. Come see me, host the Oscars like a pro, give away posters, have a great time. Obviously, be social distance. We'll be wearing masks. It'll be perfectly safe. No cases of COVID at theaters, guys. Theaters are very, very safe. Let us go back to theaters. Come on, public health. Just let us go back to theaters. Yeah, come see me on Oscar night. I'm just going to pitch that, because I'm a darn good Oscar host 4 years running. It's the best part of my job, that one night a year. I love the rest of my job. I love the people I work with. I love my bosses. I love projecting. I love hosting Oscar night. I know I don't look professional right now, but we'll be doing that. Tyler, what are we talking about on your channel? 2S for fucking fantastic. We can find you at Tyler Wolf. What are you reviewing this week?
Well, this week I am finally going to premiere my probably last DuckTales video ever about how characters have progressed over the course of 3 seasons in regards to how they all started off incredibly isolated, the conflicts that came from coming out of their shells, and the guidance and inspiration they received from their new friends and their new family to become just altogether strong, independent, and completely happy and satisfied with their lives. And it's the rare show that emphasizes that we all need to make mistakes in order to learn from them and keep fucking making them, especially making the same fucking mistakes. I really wish people understood that about life nowadays, but what the fuck are you gonna do?
Yes, well, check that out for Tyler. We've got all our shows. We have a new show debuting Tuesday. Alicia's going to be reviewing Really Bad TV from the beginning. We feel sorry for her. She wanted to. She volunteered. So we're going to be going through every single episode there. Really Bad TV Reacts. We sort of ran out of episodes because we did them all. But now Alicia wants to react to them. So we're reacting again because no one says I can't do it. We also got Community Cast Wednesday and Saturday, and the Josh and Tyler Show every Friday, which you're watching now. Check out next week's episode. If there's content, something you want us to talk about, please comment below. We'll cover anything. You just have to let us know what it is. Within reason, of course, unless we've covered it or we don't want to cover it. Like, we're not going to cover top 10 snowmen movies because, we just don't like snowmen as much as those snowmen back there. And I will leave you on this note, good sir. Birds of Prey does not have the option to win an Oscar. Unlike Suicide Squad did.
Oh, shut up about that.
Thanks for joining us on the Tyler and Josh Show, the Josh and Tyler Show. Whatever we call this thing when we talk about for like an hour, 2 hours every week. It's getting longer every time we talk more because I have more rants. It's a thing. Thanks for joining us, Tyler. Say something awesome!
And the Oscar goes to... Oh, who gives a shit?